Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Sound of the Loons, presented by Allina Health, and yet another week full and packed with action. I mean, we could talk about just the week that was, but it's more fun sometimes to kind of wrap up everything that's been, because soccer is a never-ending cycle, and we all know that. There's no rest for the weary. We can just ask our next guest that, who I'm going to call him Tommy Scoots, Tom Bogert, but more importantly, the new man with the Athletic, joining his, enjoying, I'm sure, his new gig. But first of all, Tom, thanks for joining me, because you've got the dish on everything. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to get a call up. I've gotten a couple rumors of interest before about potentially jumping on. This time you guys came through with the invite, so I'm glad. Guess now the Athletic was the one that kind of put it over the top. All right, he's legitimate. Time to have him up.
You know what? I think it's more your schedule. We all know what your schedule is. I've heard enough of your other podcasts and your conversations with Extra Time to know that you never sleep. So I'm not sure how your wife puts up with that, but it's hard to put the phone down these days. It's a blessing and a curse. You got to go somewhere where there is no signal.
That's funny, even to go too meta into that. It's like the only times that I can actually disengage from like my phone or whatever and not feel like I'm doing stuff. Like I have to turn it off and put it in a drawer somewhere. And like, so I need to be more disciplined about finding times to do that. And
even then, is it like speaking to you, like where you're like looking out of your peripheral vision? Like, I know it's in the drawer over there. Like, am I missing something? What is happening here?
So that's the only way that it works, because if it's not off, then I'll know it's like I could just open the drawer and like look just to see what like happened. Like, no, like I'd have to turn it back on to like see. No. So yeah, that's what I need to do, because again, any other situation, because I'm not a disciplined enough person, it's in the back of my mind.
Well, especially if you have an Apple Watch, because like even if you had your phone in the drawer, but your watch is vibrating, like
I resisted that for so long. I finally got an Apple Watch this season. Shout out to the new Apple TV deal that Major League Soccer. But it wasn't that I thought that they was a bad product. I thought it was an awesome product. I was like, I don't trust myself. I'm on my phone too much. I'm too distracted as it is. Like I don't need another reason, but like they're awesome, and like I'm fully converted.
I totally get it. But I do know what that's like sometimes when you just feel the watch vibrating. And usually for me, it's a family text chain that's going nuts about something that's not relevant. So I don't have the same kind of stress level that you have, but just a highly entertaining family text chain usually. So I want to get your pulse on sort of, let's not talk about the transfer window that just happened. Let's talk about all the moves that were made in the offseason and the big signings that came in, and whether or not some of these guys are living up to their billing. Do they need more time? Which one to you? And we could just name a couple. We could talk about Giacomakis with Atlanta United, but we know he was out with hammy last week. But in general, what he's going to mean with Vander at Portland, who maybe needs a little more time, but they seem like they're really high on him. Kai Kamara at Chicago. What to you has maybe kind of said, oh, wow, this was a great deal, or something that are like, I'm not sure how this is going to work out?
I'll start with the positive. Giacomakis, you already brought him up, but like that one made a whole lot of sense. Like in theory, it's like, all right, like everything I've read about this player is that he occupies center backs. He's a relentless worker. He works the channels. Like his usage rate was super low. And like what Atlanta needed most this offseason was to change their collection of talent to like a cohesive group. And one way you do that, when you have a couple ball dominant attackers, Thiago Almada, he should be on the ball as much as you possibly can. So ball dominant is good for him. Luis Arujo wasn't exactly the same. I still think he's a very talented player, but so you have two guys who are ball dominant and who like to dribble and who you weaponize their dribbling. You need the rest of the attack to have people who do work without the ball and who complement them. So Giacomakis, like in theory, is like, all right, like I think this one's going to work really well. And he's been every bit as kind of a perfect fit as I thought. And like, look, I'm making it sound like that he's not a super talented player on his own, like that he just runs hard, whatever. He's obviously a really great finisher, really intelligent in terms of his movement. And again, the way that he works, the way he occupies players, he's freed up space for Almada underneath him. And again, on the left wing, whether it's Caleb Weiler or Derek Etienne, they've done similar things. And just kind of the way that those four players are operating together around Thiago Almada has just been fantastic. And so Giacomakis is like everything that I kind of thought he might be, and more so far, really.
Well, and it's interesting when you talk to Gonzalo Pineda, and this was before Giacomakis was even playing. This was when they were still trying to sort out his paperwork, and we had done the first Atlanta game of the season, a home game. like they were like also raving about him as a person, that he was just itching to get on the pitch, doing the work, training with the team. So those are sometimes the intangibles that you can do your research on these guys, but you don't really necessarily know until they get in what that will look like. So have you heard much of the same?
Yeah, I mean, and like they're really quickly to kind of talk about this publicly, which is good. And like, I don't know, you could be cynical and suggest that, of course they're going to say that. They're not going to say the guy's an a-hole or whatever, like in public. But like, you can kind of read between the lines when it's like it feels forced or it feels like natural. Like it seems really genuine from them, from everything that Pineda and them are saying. So yeah, like again, I like that's all important. And nobody's going to be as the high points of 2017, 2019, Joseph Martinez. Nobody's going to have that same kind of competitive fire, like, because that he was a one of one kind of dude. But like Giacomakis, he's got that dog in him. He's got some of those traits. And again, I want to be careful to separate him from Joseph Martinez because that's not fair to anybody for what those 3-4 years were like. But Giacomakis does bring like a little bit of that fire, like in a good way. So like that's been cool to see too.
What about Evander with Portland? Because you sometimes feel too it's about how the player is brought in and what is built up around it. The GP tag itself carries a certain amount of mystique and prestige with it, because that's just something that sort of MLS, right, has created and manufactured as the DP tags. It's going to make player. But then on top of it, this highly sought after, most expensive player trying to toe the line. But what is he really? I mean, what's sort of the vibe around that signing? And does he just need more time, or what's the energy around that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I have a pretty long leash when it comes to these things, like because just MLS is such a unique and different challenge that like we've seen this before where players, they can struggle for half a season, even a full season, and then all of us, like even Hani Mukhtar, like it took him probably half a year, and there was a pandemic too, so it was even more difficult for any player to kind of come. And now Hani Mukhtar has been the best player in the league for me over the last 2 years. And like, again, it wasn't immediate. And that's not to kind of put those expectations on Evander, but like for all the criticisms I think I had early, like his first few games before his injury, and I don't know how long he was dealing with the injury. So maybe that's part of an excuse, but like, I don't know. He was just like a little off. It like wasn't really clicking. Like he was doing things at a little bit of a different beat than the players around him. He's got a PK goal over the weekend, which is always a nice way to get you to kind of hopefully get your DP going. But yeah, like I don't know. You just look at his pedigree, his resume, his talent. That like I'd be shocked if he doesn't perform really well, and whether he kind of lives up to these really really big expectations is another thing. But I don't know. It would take a few more months of like, all right, this guy kind of stinks for me to like be too worried. But yeah, so I'm gonna go with more time. And again, Jimmy Chara being out doesn't help. Their rotating cast of struggling center forwards hasn't helped. Like they can't help any kind of attacking DP. But like again, I think that once if this team is always injured, so maybe this will never happen. But once they can get something close to a first 11 in the attack around Evander, and then you got to get more and more minutes, like as he's playing well individually, that'll help with that group. So again, like I know that it's not the most exciting take or whatever. Just give him more time. But like, yeah, I'm not really worried yet.
But Portland is also, I mean, that's an absolute fair assessment because they haven't even had a regular group of training, let alone games. I mean, you talk about
crazy.
It's crazy, and it's crazy because it doesn't seem to be like a one-off. It's kind of this weird thing where they consistently have some of these nuts injuries, and now you have Eric Williamson. Blanco's not been on the field. Like, it's just crazy what they've kind of dealt with over the last few years. But at the same time, so you just hope that maybe the pressure and the conversation around what he's supposed to be bringing, and I don't know how much he listens to that or doesn't affect him as a player. And you start to put too much pressure on yourself because of the hype and the buildup when you bring in a player like that and you spend that kind of money on a player.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point as well. Plus, like, look, he was leading the Europa League in assists over this season when he left. So after the group stage. But he was more of like an 8 for Michelin. Like every like kind of the scouts I talked to is that like this is a number 10 who can work like an 8. And that was one of the reasons the Timbers were attracted to him. With the Timbers, like he was starting as a 10, and now it's like even more of like a second forward where they like have to be like, no. Like, we don't need you to progress the ball. We need you to hit the final pass. It was like Ricky Puig when he came to the Galaxy, when he was playing as like a deeper role with Barcelona. And he came here as like, no. We need you to do the final ball. So I think that there was some getting used to for him where like, oh, yeah, I really am the guy. And like, I need to be further up the field. And maybe you get frustrated if the ball isn't coming to you again. Like the Timbers are playing on the back foot for a decent amount of those games. And again, it's not easy to kind of fit into that when you're used to, all right, like I'll go orchestrate. Like, no. We need you further up the field because we need you to play that final ball. Because if you come deep, it's like even Lucho Costa at Cincinnati in his first season. he like one of the best things that Pat Noonan and Chris Albright did was they got it in him to stay higher up the field. We're going to get you the ball higher up the field. And then again, a lot of other things changed around him, but like that was probably one of the biggest driving catalysts in like Cincinnati. So again, I think that takes repetition for a player like Evander to, okay, like you got to be like a classic number 10. Maybe you don't have to worry as much about the work off the ball. And obviously they would like for him to continue working hard, but like, hey, like priority number one is create chances.
It's crazy though, because some of those players that are used to playing that way, I mean, at first they might like the idea of just being pushed up higher as a number 10, but at the same time, some of them, that's the way they get into the flow of it. That's how they find their way in a game, is being the 8, and then that pushes on and helps and contributes to the offense as well. So I just wonder how he feels about that. That's what they and how they want him to play.
That's a good point too. Like, again, like that sounds awesome on paper. Like when you're going through the pitch deck, when you're saying, oh, like I'm going to be the face of the team that had Diego Valeri, and now like, hey, it's me, and the idea is for you to be here forever. And like, yeah, it's everything's going to run through you. Like, that's awesome. But then like you're down 1-0 and you haven't gotten a touch in 8 minutes, and you're like, just run back and give me the ball. Then it takes a little getting used to, as you say, like, all right, so, 100 touches turns into 60. And every time you get the ball, because you're in the attacking third, you're getting kicked and you're getting harried. So like maybe a couple of times he wants to drop back, get a few touches in, and then jog back out. But like, yeah, it is a transition.
Yeah, especially with Eric Williamson when he went down with the injury, and they're still trying to kind of find that mix. And we talked about it. The more dangerous you are in the attack with your midfielders or whoever, because right now it's a lot of the outside backs getting forward, but without Blanco, who liked to drift outside, it was sort of their quote unquote number 10. Until they get some of those more pieces around him, we don't really know what he's going to be. What about some of the interleague movement? We can talk about Kyndra, and people are like, oh my gosh, he scored for like every team he's ever played on, and he has this many goals, and yada yada. I'm like, but my question was always like, why is he on so many teams if he's scoring so many goals? But he still continues to do it, and he finds a way to do it, And then you have Matt Hedges, different side of the ball, right? And the solidity that he brings to that back line, which, has needed that help. And then Montreal, who has like turned over their entire roster and their coaching, and they got to win, but they played Kansas City. So, what do you see maybe as the interleague moves? Giassi's artist to Austin, is he going to find his way there against an already really talented offensive, team in Austin? Like, what has impressed you the most about some of those moves that happened in the offseason?
Yeah, I'll start on the negative side for this one. You talked about Giassi's artist. Like, man, I was saying all offseason, like, this is like maybe he won't be the best forward in the league, but I was like, put him into Austin's attack that keeps creating chances. He's just going to score. You don't have to worry. Like, just don't even think about him. He's just going to score goals. That's been extremely wrong so far because he hasn't scored yet. And like, some smarter people than me, like Matt Doyle, started to point this out, that like why it's not exactly going well is that Driussi and him occupy similar areas. And again, while Giassi, I think, is very good in terms of pressing and off the ball, Maxi Rudy is like elite. Like for all the stick that he gets, or maybe he doesn't score enough goals, he's not consistent enough, like whatever it is, like his work off the ball made life easier for Driussi and other players. And again, like the advanced numbers of them regressing to the mean, I still thought that they were going to create enough chances, and Zardes has enough ability. And like, again, he finishes off those sequences. His best season was when Josh Wolf was an assistant under Berhalter in Columbus. And like, that's the system that Wolf is playing in Austin. So all these things, I was like, it's a no-brainer. Don't even worry about it. There's not even much to talk about because it's obvious. And it turns out it's not that obvious. So like that's been a disappointment for me to watch. I love that you bring up Kyndra because he can get overlooked just because of his age or whatever. But like, man, he's awesome. Like, Chicago is so much better when he's on the field, and like Montreal is so much worse without him. And I know that there are a lot of stylistic changes. I think that he probably fits better to what Chicago are doing than what Montreal or Hernan Lozada. But like, that's really cool to see. And like, he moves around. Like I interviewed him for a story when he was in Vancouver. It was like 2 teams ago. and 3 teams ago, because he went to Finland.
Going to say, are you sure it was only 2?
Yeah. And I remember like laughing at them then. I was like, I hope you don't take this question the wrong way, but like, you don't look like a 35-year-old out there. And he like laughed. He's like, I don't feel like it either. And like, we're 3 years later, and this dude still is like, I don't know, man. It's age defying. It's really fun. It's obviously everything that goes on, in the Kai Kamara experience, which is why he's on 11 different teams or whatever it's been, and why some of those teams weren't consecutive. It was he would be with the team and then leave and then come back later. So again, there's that. But like I want to focus on the fact that he's chasing Landon Donovan. He'll catch him soon, and just I can't believe, again, when he went to Finland, no MLS team tried to sign him. Like his career was essentially over in this league 2 years ago. And he went to Finland because Sierra Leone qualified for AFCON, which he played a huge role in them qualifying, and was like, I need to play. And then he comes back to Montreal last year and he's awesome. And then he's still great with Chicago this year. It's a wonderful story.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like the enigma that is Kai Kamara. And that's like, it kind of just sums it up because everybody's it's like you heard whispers of what he's about, but yeah, when he's on the pitch and he's scoring goals and he's going to do the work and he's going to put in the energy. So,
I will say that like I've heard from like a bunch of people at a bunch of different places that he's genuinely a good guy. And that like he like teammate, like Alphonso Davies loves this guy. Alphonso Davies like swore by him. There was other younger players at the top. So like, I don't know what the kind of disconnect is. It's like maybe his own unrealistic expectations. The one in Montreal came down to a contract dispute. He claimed that they made false promises and Montreal pushed back on that. Again, he's asked out at a bunch of other different places. But again, like from a lot of the people that I've talked to over different stops, like, yeah, he was a really good dude. He is a really good dude. I don't have any ill will against him. It's just, sometimes he has unrealistic expectations. So again, like I would just making sure that people know he's not throwing punches behind the scenes or something ridiculous.
Yes. And when I say the whispers, I mean, I think it's like, unless you're in those conversations there in the locker rooms, but at the end of the day, like I've never had a bad interaction with him. He played for Minnesota United, I've never had a bad interaction with him. He's always been pleasant in interviews, says yes to everything. His family is always around. They're important to him. His kids are around. So I've never had a bad interaction. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's just that he has this view of himself and what he deserves, and he's not willing to back down from that. And that's not a negative either. Like you feel like this is what I'm worth, and I'm not going to back down from that. And he keeps finding ways to be successful, to be effective and play on different teams and elevate teams. So, at the end of the day, like I don't fault anybody who feels like this is where I'm at and you have to come and meet me there or I'm going to go find work elsewhere. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I mean, you bring back his short Minnesota tenure. I thought Heath was even saying it in his like quotes, like when they got him, he's like, yeah, we've tried to sign him like before. He was like, and I was like, this is a perfect fit, both, technically, tactically, and like personality wise. I was like, oh, cool. Like they traded for him. They're going to resign. I was surprised when he didn't. I was like, all right, like if Heath and Minnesota didn't keep this guy, like what I thought was a perfect fit just between person and club, I was like, oh, this dude's MLS career might be over. And that's before he went to Finland. And again, like here we are 2 years later. It's just really cool.
Well, that was back at a time too when Minnesota United was whipping in like 100 balls a game. So like if there's that's the perfect fit for Kai Kamara. What about on the opposite side of that? What about like Matt Hedges to Toronto? What does he do for this team? And I know Toronto is still trying to figure it out. I'm almost a dual citizen with Canada for how many Toronto games I'm doing right now. I'm interviewing Bob Bradley every week. But what do you see from Matt Hedges? What does he do with this team?
Yeah, look, I understand why Dallas balked at kind of the long-term deal that Toronto did. You don't exactly know if it's going to age perfectly or not, whatever. Like that aside, one of the best bets in this league is building around like a domestic center back who's been here for a long time and has been successful for a long time. And for whatever his like physicality might age, he's mostly played like at least 75% of the games his entire career. And like, again, there's been questions about that, how that might age. We'll figure it out in year 3 or 4. But like year 1 and the Sean Johnson signing as well, like this is kind of what Toronto needed to do. They needed to go out and like, it wasn't just, and what they did this offseason, it wasn't just one signing defensively. It was, we need a complete makeover. And that's what they did with Hedges and Johnson. To their credit, it's come off pretty quickly. It's been more the attack. Like, I mean, look, the game against Philly was awful and everything else. That stuff happens in a long season. But I think that, again, like they needed those signings to hit the ground running because, again, we don't know how exactly they're going to age. And so far, they've done that. There's still flux around, the fullbacks. Richie Larrea's loan deal is up in the summer. I'm sure that, it makes too much sense for everybody for him to stay. But again, that has to go. That has to happen. They brought in Savania for more depth and rotation in the midfield, a move that they really needed in terms of his legs and his motor. So again, I think that there's still pieces fitting around them and what, the center back pairing is with Hedges and Roasted in front of Johnson. Like that's a lot of flux for, the structure of your team. And again, I've taken away positive thoughts early in the season. Again, they would want the results to be better. The Philly game is, again, I point to it. I don't want to overlook it just because it was the worst result. But like, if you kind of look past it, you go, okay, like whatever, chalk it up to one day, chalk it up to this or that. Like, there's a real pathway for this team to be competitive. And like by last season, people were all excited, obviously, as they should have been for Insigne and Bernadeschi. But like, I don't know, like the defense was too flimsy for me that I was like, I have to see it to believe it. And then they kind of puttered out at the end of the season. This year, I was most looking forward to seeing what Hedges and Johnson would do because I'm not worried about Insigne and Bernardeschi whenever they're fit and playing. So again, I think that was a big check mark for them. They do need to start picking up more results than they are right now. But again, like I'd be cautiously optimistic on that side.
What did you think of, and just transitioning to this last window though? So is CJ Sapong sort of a revelation for them? Is this a new beginning for him? I know he scored and he's barely been there a handful of days, and he's got some ridiculous record of scoring for the first time he plays for a new team, and he did it. But Bob Bradley said to us last week, this guy will make every near post run, every far post run. He will make every run. And once the guys around him start to understand that if they put the ball in those spots, he will be there. Yeah. And you saw that right away with Bernardeschi and Insigne in the first game, that they could do the combination. They could play the ball in, they could play the ball to the back post, and he was there. What do you think about that for the signing?
Yeah, and he fits really well between Insigne and Bernardeschi. I feel like it's a bit of an indictment of their previous offseason signings that you're turning to trade for a 34-year-old center forward who hadn't scored in the better part of a year for Nashville. And like, I'm fine with CJ Sapong. Like, he'll be better in this role, or like the way that he worked with Hani Mukhtar. He made life easier for Mukhtar, and Mukhtar had this great season. Like, if you put him around great players, that's good and that's useful. And this is going to be better than an injured Adama Diomande. And they just clearly don't believe in Ayo Akinola. They've, I've been reporting or heard pretty much essentially since they signed him to a contract extension, he's been available for trade. So that's not a great sign either. So yeah, like, look, like it's better than what they had 2 weeks ago, but that's not saying a whole lot. So I don't know. I think that Nashville, we're getting a whole lot of questions about their legitimacy as contenders or whatever tier you wanted to put them in, because of, it was like, all right, Hani, Mukhtar, and Sakin, and then that was it around them. And they had a significantly better defensive structure than Toronto has. So yeah, he fits well with these two players, but like, how long until they need to go, okay, like we need to sign a center forward again? Because Adama Diomande has been an injury-prone center forward most of his career. That doesn't get better with age. CJ Sapong is 34. Like, he is obviously much more reliable physically, but again, he hadn't scored for like a year. Like, I think that this will be a boost, but I want to be careful to be celebrating this, because I think that it's more of an indictment of previous moves, and that you're in this position that days before the window closes, like who can we trade for? CJ Sapong.
Well, and it's interesting too, because yes, CJ Sapong's a number 9, but maybe similar to Hani Mukhtar, like maybe they don't want that many goals from him. Maybe they want goals from Bernardeschi and Insigne, and maybe that's the real thing, is like, okay, this guy's going to make the runs and he's going to occupy space and he's going to draw center backs and he's going to make the runs. But, Insigne is going to continue to go down the left and cut it back on his right and curl it into the back post. Like, no one cares if CJ Sapong is scoring a goal or not.
That's a good point. And that's totally fair. And look, like that's the view for Toronto here. I just think that we might be talking, what's it, May 2nd right now, that the window opens again on July 4th or July 7th. And like, hey, are Toronto going to try to sign a center forward? Or like, now what do you do with these? Like, again, I think in the short term, it's a positive, but like, I just think that this is a Band-Aid and not a solution.
Sure. And then what about any big surprise for you? Let's not even talk, players, teams. I mean, since St. Louis has been the talk of the town, now they're on this little bit of a, they were riding high on what they were doing. Now they've kind of maybe come back to reality a little bit, because now teams are starting to figure out what they are capable of. Kind of like Cincinnati. You talk to Pat Noonan and he's like, we're not surprising anybody this year. We surprised a lot of people last year. We're not doing it this year because everybody knows. Yep. You've got New England, who was at the top of the East, massive injury to Dylan Barrero. Like, what has surprised you, or maybe not surprised you? LA Galaxy, Sporting Kansas City. I mean, are those two guys going to have a job soon?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, it'd be disingenuous to start the surprises anywhere else in St. Louis. Again, I know that we've all been talking about it, but like, it shouldn't be overlooked. It's still incredible. And, if their pace slips a little bit, I don't know. This is still so far beyond what everybody thought that they were going to be. And we all looked at the roster and we were all wrong. I don't know about Leuven. I don't know about Klaus. Even the intra-league signing, like, Tim Parker, he's good with the Red Bulls, but he hasn't been that guy for a while. Like, Houston are paying half his salary just to trade him away to move on with their build. Like, I don't know how it's going to work. They've been awesome. Like, all of their intra-league signings have been really valuable contributors that anybody else in MLS could have had. They were expansion draft guys. Jake Durinsky was signed in free agency. There wasn't exactly a bidding war for him. Jared Stroud wasn't even making the bench for Austin FC. Kyle Hebert was signed as a free agent after the draft, in which he wasn't drafted. 9 teams passed on a 3rd round selection. So 9 teams said, not only do we not want to draft you, we don't want to draft anyone. We're like, we don't even want to pay for your plane ticket to come to preseason and see if you can make the team, right? So I don't want to overlook that or belittle that just because I keep saying the same thing. It's right, like, but like it's still the biggest surprise of the season. On the negative side, I didn't think Kansas City were going to be particularly great, but this has been really, really bad. And I don't know, you just kind of look at that team to echo what Johnny Russell was saying. I don't see where it gets better, you know.
But see, I was totally wrong before Willie Gatta got hurt. But like, I mean, I thought the way they finished last season,
exactly,
that even if they didn't get Polito back at full strength and, you know, Gotti Kyndra back at full strength, like they were going to be okay because they had found some other opportunities and Tommy was doing great. Like, but you know, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. Is it the back line again? Is it Tamilia's getting a little bit older? I know. Like, I don't know what's what the heck.
That, I mean, so that's the thing. But like, I keep on focusing on that. That was my reason for being dubious of them coming into this season. I was like, look, I don't know how Emilio's going to be. Center backs, it's been a problem. Fullbacks have been a problem for a long time. These are long-term issues all across the back line in number 6. They've had year after year after year where they just haven't properly addressed it. And it's really disappointing. Like, people are talking about Vermees or whatever. Like, Vermees as a head coach, I think he could turn it around. Vermees as a sporting director, I'd have some serious questions, you know, like there's not been enough good, but again, like that's what I kept focusing on. And they scored 3 goals this year. Like, I don't know, like Willie Agata must have been hurt like severely, like while he must have been playing through something. He looks like a different guy. Eric Tommy is like just like slower on the ball. He's like going more sideways and vertical. Like, again, Daniel Shao is he's a little bit erratic in terms of goal scoring, but he's like a proven like above average, I think would be fair to say. MLS winger. He was on like best 11 ballots 2 years ago. Like, it's like weird. It's weird. It's like odd. It's curious. Like, again, like looking at this group right now, I don't know how it gets better this season. Like, I don't know how it gets better without like a teardown, without, I don't know. So that's been weird. But again, like I wasn't as high on them coming into this season, but you know, definitely not like this. Galaxy's the one where I was just completely wrong. I don't know what I thought. I bought too much into Ricky Pooch, I think. And then I don't know. It's just been really, really disheartening for that group too. Like Pooch, I think he has like 1 assist or whatever. Like, that's not good enough. I know that, you know, you can only get assists if people are finishing, but like Joveljic has been playing the whole season. Chicharito hasn't, but like even now when he is, like it seems like finally going to go to the 3-5-2 or just doing whatever they can to have Joveljic and Chicharito on the field at the same time, which is the obvious solution.
It's just so bizarre when you have some of these coaches that have been so proven in this league and not being able to find the answers or some sort of solution. And back to your point about Peter Vermees and Sporting Kansas City. I mean, a lot of people have made too lately is like looking at, is the well gone dry? Because so much of it was about coming through some of these youth players. And he was so adamant about, I will play these guys if they deserve it. Kind of like Brian Schmetzer does with Seattle, right? And you could have these guys like, hey, I know the kind of 10 we want. I know the kind of 6 we want. I know the kind of 8 we want. And we groom these guys to be that guy. Well, you get rid of Ilie Sanchez. You get rid of, you know, I mean, we could go back to the Ike Tara deal, right? With center back when he came to Minnesota. And then you get rid of Ben Sweat. And I understand that Ben Sweat is like not some fabulous revelation as an outside back, but he had sort of this chemistry with Shallowy. And like you sometimes could just knew what you counted on. I don't know. Like it is bizarre that they feel like they don't bring up the youth as much. They've gone more. They spent the money on Polito and now it's like, I don't know. It's just really crazy. But I can't even imagine. I haven't listened to a whole lot of Peter Vermees' post-game press conferences, but they can't be great.
No, definitely not. And I like, you brought up a really good point about like having this defined style. And again, the top down structure of, we want our academy teams to play the first, like it's just a modern way to play. And one of the advantages of that is that, and I've spoken to people at the Philadelphia Union about, like Jim Curtin, like kind of turned me on to this when he was just like, yeah, the good part about having like this whole structure and everything is that like, when we promote a young player into the first team, yeah, like he'll be a little bit overwhelmed because any professional debut or any kind of first steps into your professional career are. But he's been playing in our system since he was 14. He knows exactly what's asked for him. Yeah, the game will be faster. There'll be better players around you, but you know your role. You know, like it's supposed to be top down. And like Kansas City have had like a structure. It's all of the same things. And they haven't been bringing players through like Busio and Shallowy. And Shallowy was a while ago now. Busio's been gone for a few years. Like it's been weird. Like, again, like from all like international signings, not panned out. They haven't replaced Ilie Sanchez, to your point. They let him go. They declined his contract option, and he's still been playing at like, all-star best 11 kind of caliber for LAFC. That's got to hurt because they still haven't really replaced him. They haven't replaced Iko Parra. They've tried with different center backs. It hasn't really, like Andre Fontes had one really good season. Other than that, he's not been very good for this team. Graham Zusi is still playing right back. That could not have been the plan 3 years ago for him to be playing this many minutes still. Same thing with Roger Espinoza. And again, these guys are crucial to your locker room, your culture, and they can still add to the team, but it shouldn't be being relied on to play as many minutes as they are. And then, so you just kind of go down the list and it's just like Beasler hasn't been replaced. Beasler or Parra, like, haven't been replaced. And like, I don't know. It's unfortunate to see. And again, you talking about last year, I don't know. I don't understand how it was legitimate down the stretch. It wasn't smoke and mirrors. It wasn't a team wildly overperforming their expected goals or just like two players going like thermonuclear. And it's like, all right, they can't keep this up. Like what the whole part about it was like, oh, wow, this is pretty like replicable. Like if they bring in a 6, which they did, and maybe they add to the defense, and just none of it's panned out. It's truly, I don't understand. I just don't understand.
That's why we play the games. That's like the whole craziness of this league, right? Is like, don't bet on this league. Don't pretend like who's going to win. I mean, exactly. We haven't even gotten into the CCL game, which is tonight. If you're listening, I mean, no, this isn't going to go live before then. But so I want to talk to you just to wrap this up, because I'm sure you've got places to go and people to text. But what's the overall thought and pulse on this league and where it stands today? I mean, you've been around this league a long time, and we talk about this not being the quote unquote retirement league anymore, and some of the young players that are coming in, what they're being sold for, and what's the vibe you get when you talk to people elsewhere about what this league is now?
I think that it's genuinely getting more respect, and not, I want to be careful. I don't want to make it sound like I'm suggesting it's a top 5 league in the world or something, but like, I don't know, even 2 years ago, you were still arguing with people about stupid retirement league nonsense, or, whatever you want to say. Like, oh, why would this player go there? And then like, I don't know, Thiago Almada being on Argentina's World Cup roster adds legitimacy. And like Thiago Almada coming here for $16 million adds legitimacy. Like that's a club record signing for like, mid-table clubs in Italy. I don't know off the top of my head, but you know what I mean? That's not a fee that a whole lot of teams in the world are spending. And that's, you had to convince him to come too. He's not here against his will. Like his idea was to go to Europe after this, and he's ready to go now. So he won't be here for all that long. But like, again, that's a huge, feather in the league's cap. And like, there's a lot of teams that have focused scouts here, not that they come for scouting trips. And big clubs have scouts in the United States. So teams in Europe, like, are, again, I don't even want to say belatedly, because I sound like a stupid MLS homer, because like there were legitimate there, and there still are legitimate concerns and criticisms that you can make for this league to continue growing. But a few years ago, it's like overlooked. Like Sasha Kljestan was a U.S. international. He had to go on trial before, like, Celtic wanted to sign him, and it was like, we can't do the deal without having him come to train. Could you imagine if like K-Cow, like, San Jose, we're not going to put an offer in until he comes in and trains with us, because we don't know if he's actually any good, because your league kind of sucks. Like it's crazy that's where it was 10, 15 years ago, or like 5 or 6 years ago. Some of the players that were coming in from international signings were just not that good, or overpaid, or like you had to overpay to convince them. Like the Portland, like we're talking about Evander not quite living up to expectations yet. MLS team convinced, it signed the Europa League's leader in assist, 24 years old. That player goes to a different European club. Dejan Joveljic hasn't, like, I'm a big fan of his, but like he hasn't gotten consistent playing time. That dude had like 22 goals on loan in the Austrian first division and was going to leave Eintracht Frankfurt. That dude never comes to MLS. And so like, it's being repeatable. The U22 initiative. So it's not even like South America, that trend we've talked about, and that's been crucial to this league's improvement and this league's stature and the talent and everything else that's coming in. They're also getting Ricky Puig, Dejan Joveljic, and insert Leon Flock, and he was American born, but like, again, these are guys that they're coming to MLS to go back to Europe at a higher level. Like, they believe that this can happen. And again, you're going to get paid well here. The check's always cash. You don't have to worry about that. All the advantages of teams recruiting players to live in the United States or Canada. So yeah, it's been really cool to watch it grow. Again, like, I know I sound like I got the pom-poms out, company man or whatever, but like, look, there's a lot of things that can change in a positive way. We could talk about a lot of different things that then again, I don't really feel like getting into in terms of the critiques and the obvious spots for growth and the obvious talent that can be improved upon and brought in. But like, right now where we are, it's unrecognizable from 7 years ago. And I think that we have to take a step back every once in a while and be like, oh yeah, like, that is pretty cool.
But I think the flip side of that coin is like it's not just about guys coming in here to do well and then go on to Europe. It's guys that are just from here and are Americans that are coming through academies and that are in this system in the United States that are being sold. And Philly has been sort of one of the leaders in that. FC Dallas, of course. But I think maybe the difference between those two clubs, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like some of those guys for Dallas like never even stepped on the field for the first team and we're being sold, and people are like, wait, should we sort of benefit from how good they are before we sell them? Whereas Philly actually used some of their guys before they sold them. But it's a positive either way that you're getting these American players that are coming through academies and being sold. Yeah. It's not just about the talent that's coming in.
Yeah, the talent identification in terms of youth soccer and the growth of academies and the money that had been starting to be put in the early 2010s, you're really starting to see the like fruits of that labor and of that money, of that investment. I like one of my favorite points from last year, Chicago Fire were bad. Chicago Fire were pretty unwatchable too. By the end of the year, I wasn't locked into a lot of Chicago Fire games, I'll be honest with you, just because of everything going around that team. They sold Gaga Slonina for up to 15 million and John Duran for up to 22 million. So this was one of a running joke in the league. You'd point to them of having a really bad season, being really disappointed, doing all these things that weren't good enough. And they're selling two players to the Premier League. And like Gaga was developed he got his first team contract when he was 14. And so he was developed by the club, given the chances, and then he was moved. John Duran was identified by their scouting, got a deal wrapped up a year before he was even allowed to move, and then he comes to MLS for a year and does that. So like that's incredibly encouraging. Like that's not one of our best example of clubs that we're saying like, wow, what a great job. This isn't Philadelphia Union. This was like a team that was bottom of the table and like kind of going nowhere last year, and there's still these positives to take away. So again, like I think that's my biggest kind of pro company man spiel when it comes to MLS.
That's a great point because I kind of forget about that because they were so bad last year that they were able to make that kind of money. I wonder what the rest of the league and some of the owners are like, wait a minute, what? How did they manage that? You know, like where's my money? But anyways, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're insanely busy, so I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. I'm sure we'll catch up soon, and if not, everybody follow you. Where can they find you on Twitter? They can read you on The Athletic. Like, what is your Twitter handle? I just know I follow you. I don't know if I actually what it is.
Yeah, just at Tom Bogert. I got into Twitter in 2009, so I got in early. I didn't have to put any numbers in my name. So
there you go. But do you have the blue check?
Not anymore. Not anymore. R.I.P.
Yeah, end of an era. Me neither. Great. Exactly. All right. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys having me on.
All right, everybody. Stay tuned. Segment number 2 coming up. Brent Kallman, the other Mr. Minnesota, is going to join me in segment number 2.
As the official healthcare provider of Minnesota United, Allina Health is focused on keeping our Loons in top condition. And with expertise in orthopedics, sports medicine, heart care, and more, Allina has the team to keep your family in the game too. The experts at Allina Health take the time to get to know you as a whole person, helping you achieve wellness for your mind, body, and spirit. It's an altogether better kind of healthcare. Learn more at allinahealth.org.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to segment number 2 of Sound of the Loons. This time I get to be joined by Mr. Minnesota himself. You know what, though? I should probably think of another name because I also call Manny Lagos that sometimes. So maybe do you have a name for yourself, Brent Kallman? What can I call you, Mr.? Like, I feel like Mr. Woodbury doesn't do you justice.
No. I just go by BK around here mostly these days.
Well, it helps when that's what's on all your uniforms and your jackets and your jerseys, you know.
Yeah.
That you just get the initials on there, but
it rolls off the tongue. It's easy.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sure as your little one gets talking too, maybe we'll have some better nicknames or whatever your little one decides to call you, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get to be joined here by Brent Kallman, who's been around for a really long time. And I'm not saying that to make you sound old. I'm just saying that to give you the correct amount of praise that you deserve for being in Minnesota soccer for as long as you have been. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about US Open Cup and what that means to be a part of that. And of course, the big win you guys just had on the road against Detroit City. But I just want to get your sort of overall perspective on, where Minnesota soccer has come over the years and what your family's involvement has been as well. But, I talked to Manny about it. I talked to Amos about it. We talked to different folks that have been around for a long time. But what's your sort of like 30,000 foot view of Minnesota soccer and where it is nowadays compared to where it started?
Um, I think you've seen a lot of growth in the level of the players that are coming out. And I think the exposure has gotten way better too for players coming up. A quick example is I played in my local club until I was 16 years old, and then I played with Bangu with U16s, which became MTA when we were 17s, 18s, 19s. And our team was really good, right? Our group was very good. We would compete at regionals. We were on the same level as a lot of those teams. And I was the only person from my team to play Division I soccer. Can you believe that? Thinking back on it now is absolutely crazy. And we just didn't get the exposure. And you didn't have D1 programs around, that were very close either to pick up kids that maybe other teams were missing. And now you have a lot of kids that are playing D1, and it's been like that for a long time now. So the good kids are getting exposure. They're getting into good programs. And then you also have St. Thomas, which is a D1 program right here in town now that, Lowry might be able to pick up some of the guys here that fall through cracks in other places, or even maybe some of the Minnesota United kids that fall through the cracks. So I think the exposure's gotten way better. And then also having the pipeline here to the first team through the academy is something that's amazing that obviously we didn't have when I was growing up. And that should just keep driving kids to get better and driving more kids to play the sport at a younger age. So I think the future is really bright.
That's such a great point because, our generation, and I'm a lot older than you are, but I mean, how many good kids were on those club teams, and club team was like the pack, right? And ODP and all these things that like don't even hardly exist anymore.
Yeah.
But now with academies, I mean, what an incredible sight to see some of these academy kids. And I know Minnesota United is still sort of in its infancy in academies, and we've seen what other clubs can do. But that's got to kind of warm your heart knowing that there are other kids that are in Minnesota that are able to come and try out and be a part of the academy, and then maybe eventually be part of the second team and the first team, and that whole concept to keep that talent in this state. Because it's here. It's here in this state of Minnesota.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a huge believer in the talent that we have here. Minneapolis and St. Paul is such a diverse area, such a diverse city and cities. And you have a lot of these kids that are foreign or they come from other countries and they move here and they're young and they're soccer first. They're soccer first kids and they have skills, and it's just about finding them and getting them in the right environment for them to keep continuing to grow and progress to the next level and hopefully, make the jump all the way to the first team. So it's something that I truly believe in the talent here, and I hope that we keep cultivating professionals from Minnesota.
How much does it help that you have some people that are in charge of the academy, in charge of, even Manny Lagos still being around, that truly believe in the soccer culture here, that we're a part of it, that we're a part of growing the sport in this state? There are some guys that have been brought in from elsewhere. I get that because you got to fill a roster and a staff and all that stuff. But how much does it help? I mean, listening to Amos McGee, his passion is youth soccer. He loves that can continue to be honed and developed here, and knowing that we came from through that system to be able to see it.
Yeah, it's huge. Exactly. Just like you said, they've seen it. They've seen it with their own eyes. Some of the talent that those guys played with and that generation come through. You just talked about Amos, Manny, Manny's brother, Tony Sana. Yeah, that's all from
Gerard.
Yeah, it's all from like a quick little area of moment in time. So they know that it's here. They, like you said, they've seen it. I mean, you touched on ODP, and now I have these ODP memories coming in my head. We had
you don't have great memories of region camp?
No, we had some amazing players in ODP in the Minnesota ODP team. My 90s team was absolutely stacked, and then just some guys just fizzle out, and you hate to see it. If you were to look back at my 90s ODP team, you'd be shocked. A lot of people on that team would be shocked that I went, as far or farther than anybody else on that team. That's how we had really good players, and just the talent's here. It's just about cultivating it and just helping it progress.
So what does that mean for you to be a part of this to be a part of this transition, and talk specifically about what was that like in 2017 when the team was announced that Minnesota's NASL team was going to MLS, and what would that look like, and what would that mean? And knowing that there's going to be a stadium that's built, one of the best stadiums in this country. And now you go to Allianz Field, and I don't know how you feel, but even, when Bobby and I, my husband and I, still go to that stadium, it's like, holy cow, this is in Minnesota. Like, who would have thought when we were younger, going to NFC and USA Cup and everything, that this would be soccer in Minnesota? How did that feel for you personally to be a part of that transition and still be a part of it?
Yeah, it was a really proud moment for me. I'm still proud of it, obviously, and still continues to drive me and everything. I'm going to pump some air into my own tires here right now, because sometimes I feel like I got to market myself. Nobody thought I was going to make the jump to MLS. Who would have thought I would have made the jump to MLS? By the time I was 20, so at the end of the 2015 season with the NASL, I'm out of contract. I have like 15 professional games under my belt, and I'm already 25 years old. I don't think people understand really how much of a long shot I was at that moment in time to make the jump with the team in 2017. They don't understand. But the guys here, the coaches here that saw me train every day for 3 years, they knew I had that level, and I knew that they knew I had that level. I heard the whispers that they wanted me around for MLS, but I just couldn't get the games. So 2016 was a huge year for me. I got a lot of games. I think I played probably 30 games in 2016. I got to show what I could do week in and week out, and I guess I showed them enough because they offered me a contract when the team went up to MLS in 2017.
So how did you do it? I mean, I was up there every day, so I understand and I got to see it, but it takes a lot of hard work to make it as a pro anywhere, in any league, in any sport. How did you do it, and how did you kind of just keep your head down and not listen to anything else and just know what you were capable of?
Yeah, I don't know. It got tough sometimes. 2013, 14, 15. The first year and a half, I knew I needed to, I wasn't ready yet, right? I was just trying to keep better, getting better every single week. And I think that was the key is, even though I wasn't necessarily getting the games at that stage, was just trying to continue to get better and keep working hard. Like you said, keep my head down. It's just kind of how I was bred, and it's just who I am, to just keep working and keep, focusing and training one day at a time. And I also had really good resources to learn from. We had older, experienced guys. I had my brother as a resource, and then you had guys like, I'm going to leave some off here, I know, but guys like Aaron Pitchcolin and Thiago Calvano that I could literally just watch them, but also have conversations with, and really help me learn the positioning, the position of center back. Because I hadn't played much center back in my life. I was a midfielder most of my life. In all of college, I was mostly a center midfielder. So to have these guys every day to talk to and watch them and get positive and, criticism from them is what helped me progress.
Anybody, once you transition to MLS, I mean, you've had, Michael Boxall's been there a long time now too. He's the second most, longest to you.
Yeah.
And you've had a plethora of other center backs that have come through there. But anybody else that you've been able to lean on, or that, when those difficult moments happen, because so much of it's mental. It's not all about physical. And yeah, you've had some injuries and whatnot, but it's so much more, I think, is mental. So anybody that you've been able to lean on within the club since it transitioned to MLS?
Yeah, Boxy is definitely a good one because he's very smart, and just talking to him about situations and breaking down situations. We think very similarly about how things should look. So he's been a really good resource. And then also the staff, the more we watch video, the easier it is, because then you understand exactly what they want from you and what the positioning and the covering should look like. So yeah, I would say mostly Boxy and then the staff.
I want to transition a little bit to US Open Cup, in which against Detroit City, who you wore the captain's armband. And then at the end, we'll circle back to family, because I want to talk I know you have an incredible family, but then now your own family that you have. So I want to talk a little bit about that US Open Cup game. You talk about the transition from NASL. We know the fire that these US Open Cup teams, these lower division teams, I say in quotes, come into, because they've got a point to prove. These players have a point to prove. You've been there on the other side of that. So what was that like to go to Detroit and be able to wear the captain's armband, come from behind, get the win. It was a rowdy crowd on the road. And now you host Philadelphia Union at home. Massive, great reward for a win on the road for you guys. What was that like for you?
Yeah, those games are so much fun. Oh my God, I have so much fun in these games. Like the Madison game last year, I think it was 2018 at Cincinnati when they were still USL before they came up. If you can't, if you're an MLS player and you're going into those games and you're not taking it seriously, or you can't get up for those games, I can't relate to that at all. I don't understand that. Those games are so much fun. Those guys want what you have and they're coming to take it for you. So you got to rise up and you got to match their intensity, or bring even more, because they're coming and they're coming with everything they have. And you also have other factors like in that Detroit game. I don't know if people could tell when they're watching it, the pitch is absolutely terrible. It's incredibly narrow too. It's a very small pitch. It's dry, they don't wet it, even though it did rain a little bit before. So I guess the ball was moving, but they have a rowdy atmosphere, especially in the first half. They were getting after us. So we did a good job of weathering the storm, even though we went down early. Eventually, in the first half, it felt like they had guys everywhere. It felt like they had an extra player or two on the field. And then as the game wore on, it started to open up a little bit more. We were able to relax and get on the ball a little bit and move it around. So I think we did a good job of weathering the storm and then kind of taking control as the game went on.
How did you, what are your words to the group after you allow an early goal on the road in that rowdy atmosphere to be able to, again, we're in the captain's armband, and I know you don't have to have the captain's armband not to be a leader. I totally get that. But what was your message to the group? How did you communicate? You had a different rotation of players, a different rotational lineup, some young guys that were a part of it. So how do you get the group in on the same page there to get that come from behind win?
Yeah, I didn't, there's not really time during the game when you give up a goal. But what I was trying to convey with my body language is we just need to stay calm. Like, it's not, you give up a goal early. It's not the time for us to abandon the game plan and guys to go running everywhere doing their own things, because that's how you give up number 2 and 3. So we needed to relax. We needed to keep discipline, keep our shape. Because what's most important then is you cannot concede the next goal. If we can get into halftime at 1-0 down, we're still okay. We're in good shape. We're going to get opportunities in the second half, but you cannot let one goal become 2 and become 3, because then the game can be over before you know it. So I guess my message was just to stay calm. And then before the game, we had some guys, I think, making their debut. I think Paddleford, maybe Devin made his debut, and some other young guys getting a chance. My message to them was, if this team makes a deep run in Open Cup, I want you guys to be able to look back at this game with pride that you guys went out there and you were professional and you did your job and you got us through in a tough environment. That was my message to the group before the game.
I love that, because those are the learning moments. That's how they get to them when they do have to step on with the first team. Maybe it's in a regular game, maybe it's not an Open Cup game, that they already feel like they're in a good spot mentally and physically that they can step in and play with you guys. They know they train with you guys a lot, which is a massive plus for them to be able to train with you guys often, but to be able to then step in a game and feel good about what they did, and they can look back at that and say that they were a part of that run, the Open Cup, whatever that might look like for you guys.
Yeah.
So now I want to shift to just the defense overall for Minnesota United, because another tough one on Sunday night against FC Dallas, but you guys held a clean sheet. You were able to keep a Dallas team that's normally relatively dangerous when you look at their attacking pieces, most of which came back from the previous season. What do you attribute the defensive success once again to this team, to whether you're on the bench and being able to watch what's taking place and then you're called upon, whether you're getting the start? What again is the key to this defense as your offense is trying to kind of find its way and click?
Well, I'm actually coming from a meeting where we just went over the defensive group, and the goalkeepers just went over a lot of the good and a couple of the defensive things that we can change, but a lot of the good stuff from the game. I think our team shape has been very, very good this year. And this is something that drives me crazy about soccer and soccer media and stuff is sometimes when teams are good defensively, the back four and the goalkeeper are getting too much credit. And sometimes when your team's scoring a lot of goals, the front guys are getting too much credit because this is an 11-player game. And I think our front players are doing a really, really good job. And I know they're probably taking some criticism right now because we're not scoring many goals. And maybe the quality is letting us down a little bit in the final third. But those guys up front and our front players are working very, very, very hard. And if we can keep that up, we're always going to be hard to score on. And we understand that that's asking a lot of those guys. They have to put in big shifts. They have to put in a ton of running, but they're doing the work right now. And if they can keep doing it, we'll be in good shape.
Anybody in particular, quite a few new faces this season that you've been overly impressed with how they've been able to step right in, perhaps? We all know it's a challenge to come to a new country or to a new team or new environment, a new system, new coach, whatever it might be. Anybody that you've been exceptionally sort of impressed with early on?
Yeah, I think whichever one's starting, Mender or Luis, are absolutely doing the work. And then Sangbin, since he's come in, working very hard. Those two, the front two players, the way we're playing right now, where we're set up, their job is to not let them play through the middle, not let their defensive midfielders control the game. And that makes a massive difference for the guys behind the ball. And it's a lot of hard work. Those two have to cover a ton of ground back and forth. And then they still have to have the energy to, when we win it, to be able to provide an option to hold the ball and start play. So all those guys they're putting in shifts for us right now.
What about this upcoming match against Vancouver? I mean, you don't have much time to focus. You can look at the tape and whatnot, but you got to turn the page and get ready for the next Western Conference opponent, which is Vancouver, who've had some ups and downs themselves this season. Anything in particular that you remember from your previous match against them? And then what does this Vancouver side look like to you?
Yeah, they play Brian White up front. He's very physical. He's really good at holding the ball. It's weird because he's not physically the biggest guy I've played against in MLS, not even close, but he's probably the strongest. Like when you get into the battles with this guy, he just seems to just barely get to things before you, or in headers, he just is good at barely getting a little nudge on things. So Boxy and Mickey are going to have their hands full with that. But also what I would look for is if we do go up a goal and they put on another striker and they go 4-4-2 like they did against us at home, it was really hard to deal with. They just kept playing things around the corner into the front two and playing from there. And they were definitely a handful. So our body shape's got to be good. If they are playing direct into the front man of Brian White, we got to have good back tackling. I think the midfielders got to turn around and they got to help the center backs make a play on the ball, because he's a handful and he can hold the ball.
And last but certainly not least, talk to me about your family, your little family, and what that's been like being a new dad. And I'm sure you're maybe giving your sister some advice now, as I know your sister and Eric Miller had a baby not too long ago, because he missed one of the games I did because he was home with the new baby. So what's that been like for you? I mean, what's the best thing so far? It's hard to pick one thing. What's the best thing so far?
I mean, the best thing so far is that our little girl's healthy and mama's healthy. That's the best thing so far. So yeah, in April, she was Georgie. Her name's Georgie K. She was born on April 20th. Her and Jenna are healthy. And what's kind of wild, or not wild, but for years in my family, I have a lot of nieces and nephews, mostly nephews. We had so many boys that were born in the span of like 6-7 years. It would seem like it was all boys. Now we have three little girls born in the last 3 months. So the game of odds are starting to even out a little bit, and we're getting more girls, and it's going to be fun because you have all my nephews that are around the same age get to play together, and I think we're all really excited for those little girls to be growing up around the same age and to have each other as friends and to play with and stuff like that, and hopefully be friends for life.
Is there any one thing in particular that maybe has happened in your short lifetime as a dad that you're like, you know, people tell you, but you don't really know until you experience it yourself. Is there any one of those things, or are you already like nervous about when going to be a teenager or anything like that? Or you're just like, I'm not even thinking about that yet?
No, I'm not even thinking about that yet. I'm trying to take it a day at a time. I saw this clip when, you know, this guy's talking about how, you know, young kids before, you know, when they're between their 1 and their 5, before you know it, it's gone. And you're going to wish that you had that time back. So I'm just trying to take it a day at a time and a week at a time. And my oldest son, Briggs, is 17 months, and watching him progress to baby, to crawling, to walking, to now climbing all over things. It's really fun just going through these stages and watching him grow and kind of come into his own. It's been really fun.
That is awesome. And you do have your hands full. And before you know it, if you have another, then you're outnumbered. Then you got zone coverage, and you know, but it's all good things. There's what a blessing. So I'll let you go, because I know even if you're done with training and you're done with your gym work and you're done with your swim session, get back to your family. But I really appreciate you taking the time. I look forward to seeing not just the rest of the season, but whatever comes next. And I'm super happy for you. So I appreciate you taking the time and joining me here today.
Thanks, Kyndra. It's good to talk to you.
All right, everybody, that wraps it up for this episode of Sound of the Loons. We will chat next week after Minnesota United takes on Vancouver. And then, of course, they got the Open Cup game coming up as well against Philadelphia Union. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.